Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Um, I see some people talking, but you will come on mute. So if you would like to say hellos, you
I
may
just
want to
said hi,
unmute yourself
Tracy.
first. Otherwise, please keep yourself on mute to keep the noise down. Um, Thank you all for joining us today on this little webinar we like to call Virtual Brunch with Actual Nerds. My name is Layton. I'm a nerd. I'm moderating this discussion today. But before I introduce the rest of our nerds and to give a few extra people some time to come in, we'll go through some housekeeping notes. We ask that you please update your Zoom name at the bottom with your full name and your company name. That allows us to properly identify you and figure out who were no-shows so that we can punish the no-shows accordingly. This is an Ask Me Anything style webinar, which means that we need your questions. We don't prepare too much ahead. We know some, but we do need your questions and your comments. We will be monitoring the chat. That's a good way to do it. Another good way to ask questions is to raise a virtual hand. To do that, go down to the reaction tab at the bottom and you can raise a hand. We'll call on you. And again, unmute yourself before you start talking. Another best practice we like to employ on these meetings is the idea of a virtual bouncer. It is someone who is not the moderator, who can spend more time and attention on the back end and technical things to mute people that are clacking on a keyboard or to kick anyone out that's causing trouble. Today, our bouncer is Jennifer Smith. Hey, Jennifer, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Hello, everybody.
Hey, Jennifer, I got a question for you. Have you heard the story of Noah with the animals in the boat?
Yes, I have.
Do you know where he kept the bees?
No.
In the archives. Yeah, it's terrible, but it's a segue to promote our new archive feature on the website. If you missed any of our webinars or you want to relive the magic, go to attendingnet.com/archive and you can view all of our old ones. This one will be up as soon as possible. And share with a friend. So with that terrible joke, I will transition into some introductions. I'd like to introduce all of our moderators today and ask them to introduce themselves and what nerdy quality is most likely to get you beaten up on a virtual playground. Christina, start us off.
Hi, I'm Christina Rasco. I am President and Chief Creative Officer here at Attendee Management. Layton is my brother, and I can tell you that I'm pretty sure his jokes got him beat up, at least by me. Myself, I like facts. I like facts, and I like to let people know that I know the facts. So that's definitely makes me nerdy, and probably I know my husband would like to sometimes. Like, yeah, you don't know everything, even though you think you do.
Thanks, Christina. Jill Rasco, you're up.
Hi, y'all. This is Jill. Beat up on the playground. Well, I was always last one picked, so I don't know that I had a nerdy thing then, other than in elementary school, I did teach myself, or middle school, I taught myself how to type, and I am a speed typist, and people didn't like me for that because I won all the typing contests. How's that? It wasn't on the playground, but that's the best I can do.
That's pretty bad. We had a substitute nerd today, an upgrade, if you will. Jeff isn't with us, but we have a younger, smarter Stephen Holland Chain, our chief technology officer, joining us today. Stephen, how are you doing today?
Doing great, Leighton. Thank you. My name is Stephen Holland Chang. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Attendee Management. And I'd probably get beaten up for spending hours and hours reading other software APIs. People would be like, what's going on? Why are you spending all this time reading SQL Server and all kinds of different programming languages? So definitely get me beat up.
Thanks, Stephen, and thanks for being here today. He's on the West Coast, so he had to roll out of bed and get ready for this pretty early. So one of the questions we get the most on these is how to keep people engaged in a virtual environment. So we're going to try something a little different than our other ones today. We're going to use the breakout room functionality in Zoom to encourage more discussion and more audience input that we normally get from a group this size. So imagine you just walked into a general session at a regular face-to-face meeting and you sat down at a table with your 8 new best friends. Some schmuck with a microphone is up on stage rambling about housekeeping notes and bouncers and naming yourself properly. And then he says, okay, let's break into smaller groups, talk amongst your table about this topic, then we'll all get back together and discuss some key takeaways. So that's what we're going to recreate today. Everybody's going to be talking about the same topic, then we're going to come back out, we're going to do key takeaways. There will be one of our assigned nerds at each table. We're going to try to mix them up from topic to topic so you're not stuck next to the same person every single time, because, you know, who wants that? We will set a timer, and it's a feature in Zoom. You can do it automatically to where you all come back together after 5 minutes. We may do more if we decide the topic is worth expanding upon. So with that, we'll get started. I almost forgot to mention that there is kind of a weird lag when you go into the breakout rooms. The window goes kind of small, and so don't, just hang tight. You'll be back in soon. So with that, I will bring up our first topic of discussion, which is what we're talking about right now. How do you keep people engaged on a virtual webinar or trade show, etc.? Looks like the host is inviting me to a breakout room, so I'll see some of you in a few seconds.
Hey, David. At least I know you, and I know Anika. Leslie. Hi, I'm Jill. And Katie, I know you too. Welcome, y'all. So you come in automatically muted. Feel free to unmute, or there's this neat trick in Zoom when you are muted. If you want to speak, you just hold down the space key, kind of like on the old walkie-talkies. So you can do it that way too. It's kind of handy.
Good tip.
Hey, isn't it fun? Oh, and here comes somebody else. We're getting Doreen join us. So anybody have a comment on our topic?
Well, I have a question on how we all got here.
It's magic.
Were we all pre-assigned, or was it just random? How did that go?
No, this one is random. You could be pre-assigned. It's up to the host of the Zoom room, but Zoom does also an automatic random poof, you go to a room.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, it's real handy.
So do you know, like, was it able to be, like, obviously you're here, but like Jennifer's not. So can you like preset the breakout host and then everybody else gets randomly assigned? So it's like partly assigned and partly random?
Not so much.
Okay.
What's happening is Jennifer is cleverly assigning me to a particular room, probably after she randomly let everybody else go.
Oh, okay. And then you can move people around.
Yeah, and she can move people around. Now we can go back to the main room if you want to. If you want to leave the room, down in the bottom right, there's a leave room, and it'll take you back to the main room. And then Jennifer could switch you to another room. If you just really hated being in my room, you could leave.
Never.
But nobody would do that.
Have any of y'all been in a breakout room before? This is my first time. I was really interested to see how this actually worked because it's a feature I want to use, but I haven't needed to do it yet, but I need to know how.
My first time too.
Oh,
Yeah,
good.
first time.
And it's hard to test with your own team when like you're pretending to be 3 people. Anybody else? Not yet?
We
Agreed.
had to get our whole team together to have a practice run just to see how it worked. And then Jennifer and I actually got on one with each other, just the 2 of us, and figured out some even more stuff. So I'm happy to give you all the tips and tricks we learned. I should probably type them up, but as a host, you can do things a couple of different ways, or like they can just, Jennifer added Marissa to our room. So she's joining us from AMI too also. Yeah, and frankly, I can't remember what we're supposed to be talking about.
Okay.
I think that it was how do you engage?
Oh, well, see,
Okay.
this is how.
But yeah, I would say just by sharing. Mhm.
That is one way. Another way, of course, is, the chat. Although, frankly, I find the chat more distracting because I'm not paying attention to the speaker when everybody's chatting.
Sure.
I agree. How did have I haven't actually been in a Zoom yet that used the reactions.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, so you can see it on my thing. Okay.
Oh, hi, Christina.
I like that a lot because it's like on your screen, right? You're not watching a chat thread and getting distracted trying to read. And
Now, there's also, if you have the list of participants up, one way to do it is ask a question and then everybody can use the yes or the no. So I just put a yes by my name.
oh,
So, but as a host, so Katie, if you were the host of this, you have the ability to remove everybody's votes. So we've engaged the audience that way. So, hey, ask a question, a yes or no question, everybody gets to vote. And then you could do it that way. There's also polling. So you can conduct a poll, and that's really simple in Zoom.
We have about 20 seconds, y'all. One suggestion I have from doing kindergarten Zooms with my 6-year-old is getting up and doing something in the space. The kids have gotten up and acted out being animals or done a scavenger hunt. So something that can get you out of your seat is always kind of something different.
That's good.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, that went by quick, that 5 minutes.
I know, doesn't it? All right, we got 4 seconds. Lovely talking to y'all. We'll see you in the big room.
We all back? Well, that seemed pretty short. I don't know about you guys. Oh, we have more coming back, I think.
It flew by.
Yeah. So I'll start with one takeaway that Tracy let us in on. She was on a call the other day where the speaker actually asked you to not talk for 2 minutes to reflect on the questions that they gave. And I thought that was just really contrary to like the need to fill space that you usually feel on a call like this. So I thought that was a pretty interesting idea. Any other tables want to jump in and give some ideas from what they're discussed?
Kim brought up some really good points in our table of just creating virtual meetings that that provide points of interaction, like breakout rooms, polls, even some musical entertainment. Although we talked about how music is so personal, people could tune out if it's not something they're really interested in. But just trying to keep people interactive and participating rather than just sort of being a bystander lurking.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I started doing a website for a nonprofit out in San Francisco. It's called Music in Place, and that's their whole deal. That like musicians are out of work right now. They're all gig workers, and if you can kind of incorporate some of the things that you would bring into a regular meeting, it helps everybody. All right, now I'm just going to call on you guys randomly. Christina.
So I had an interesting experience to turn the table a little bit. I know this is a report back, but in my breakout, the way that we got distributed when I got in the breakout, it was just two of our other attendee management folk. So we left the breakout and came back into the meeting and then got redistributed, which in 5 minutes leaves you with a little bit of nothing. But I thought it was kind of I thought my experience might be an interesting, kind of next or something for us to talk about a little bit more, is just like similar experiences with Zoom, or how to I don't know how many people here have started to play with Zoom or like are actually doing it for their meetings, but there's definitely some lessons learned. We've played with it a lot, and I hadn't had that experience yet of being the way that it randomly assigned it was like purely random and funny in this situation. So I thought I'm taking this completely off, but sometimes your engagement can maybe go off and put you in a breakout room that either has nobody in it or is kind of different than what you expected. And where do you go from there?
Question. How did you get to your next breakout room? So you left your breakout and came back, but were you able to just like join another one, or did you have to ask the host to put you in a new one?
So the way we have, it's a great question, Katie. So the way that we have it set up today is that we're kind of letting Zoom randomly assign people to breakout rooms. So essentially, Jennifer, who's bouncing and also pushing people into rooms, is, when it's time to go to breakout rooms, she's creating those breakout rooms, and she's distributing people. And for those with moderator, I think you're manually putting us in there, right, Jennifer? Just to make sure there actually is a moderator in there.
Where is the unmute button, Jennifer? That never happens in a Zoom room, right?
No,
Right.
never.
Okay. Actually, you can set it up to automatically assign, or you can assign. So there is the option to do either.
Okay, so we chose to, based on like just having a number of people and not needing them to specifically go into room and stay in a room, like we decided that we would just kind of randomly put people in. So, math being what it is, at some point randomly can kind of mess you up. Now you can do it so that you assign people specifically to a room. So like, let's say you're managing something and you have people by region or whatever million different ways you could do that. You could go in and manually say, okay, we're going to put all the Southwest people in this breakout room and all the West people in this, et cetera, et cetera. So there's lots of ways to do that, but it definitely takes some planning to know which way to do it. Now, to answer the next question of kind of leaving, once you're in a break, it kind of has that feeling where you manually move into the breakout room, and then at the bottom on your toolbar there's like a leave breakout. So you can opt to leave the breakout and it puts you back in the main room. So a good tip is like to make sure that there's somebody like a Jennifer, like a bouncer that's in there that can help when you get back to that main room, because otherwise I would have just sat there and been stranded.
But it's also a setting as the host. You can allow people to leave their room, or you can leave them stuck in there. So there are a whole lot of Zoom settings that you want to look at and play with if you're hosting the event. Just saying.
Yeah, and one thing I forgot to mention in my little housekeeping rundown is that when you do hit that leave room, it comes up with an option to leave the room or leave the meeting. So it's very easy to accidentally leave the meeting. And it's, just make sure people are aware of that if they are going between rooms. So, y'all want to do it again? One thing that came up in our room after we went through ideas of keeping people engaged is why is this the new normal, and how do you feel about inviting people into your daughter's bedroom, for example, because it's the only room in the house with a desk? And how do you feel about, none of us are, like dressed for work, but all of a sudden the new normal is to do this. Is this going to continue? What are some, best practices for doing this? And what do you guys think about it? And we'll.
Hello, hello. Welcome to breakout room 4, everyone.
Hello.
So yes, the topic in question, we'll wait a little bit, I guess, for anybody who's taking a little longer, but the topic is about how are we dealing with sort of letting public or meetings happen in your personal space, and how that affects us, and how are we adjusting to that? What are we doing to sort of make this private space become a little bit more effective for work? Does anybody have any input they'd like to share? I'll open it up to who's interested in sharing some experience or tips. If not, I will share a couple. I guess I'll get started. How's that? I think like for me, I do a lot of work already remotely. I've been working remotely for a long time. So, having an office that's private or separated from your family life and so forth, I think is very, very important. Doing it in your kitchen, in your bedroom, that can be sometimes the only place that you can do it. And I think having specific times where that is set up for your conferences is really important. Kind of trying to separate, your animals and noises is important. And definitely for a lot of people, starting to try to create sort of this background view or using a green screen, it can be very helpful, so you can cut that off if you need to. Some people have been buying these cardboard backgrounds where you can just get a green screen background for like $20 at Michael's, and sometimes that works. So does anybody else have any tips to share on this subject?
Lighting, because my spot was in my kitchen, but the window was behind me so that my kids weren't constantly walking around. But I was always shadowed. So that was one of the things that I knew that I had to fix. But I don't have a decent place to do it otherwise. I'm sitting in my kitchen. So it's kind of hard not to have any background, but it's either the kids walking behind me or you can't see me. So lighting is a big issue. I know that. So
yeah, that's a really good point. Like I have this sort of window behind me, and it always, gives me this sort of halo effect. I think it's always better to have light in front of you if you can. There are a lot of course, good things that you can get that aren't too expensive these days, like light. But it's funny how it's turned us into sort of these TV producer. Like everybody now is sort of thinking about, what is it like to be on video? What is it like to be on camera? And something that we haven't really explored as much until the COVID-19 situation. So does anybody else have any? I'd love to hear any other tips that y'all have, or just things you're struggling with, whatever. Ask a question, we're here to help.
I think there's kind of an interesting psychology of seeing yourself on calls all the time. It makes you feel pretty vulnerable, and so I personally a lot of times will turn off the self view on video calls, just to keep yourself from, like, oh my gosh, my hair is sticking out a weird way, or like, am I making a weird face when I'm doing this presentation? It can be really distracting sometimes. So that's my, I guess, advice and kind of insight on it.
Thanks, Meg.
Yeah, Meg,
Yeah,
thanks.
yeah, that's a really good point. I think we all struggle with that. In real life, you never have to think of, like, you never have to see yourself when you're talking to somebody, right? Or you're at even especially if you're public speaking, you don't see yourself and you don't necessarily hear yourself. And in these conferences, you're having to see yourself all the time. So it definitely makes us self-conscious. And I do recommend switching to like speaker view, or trying, if you feel uncomfortable, like Meg said, you remove it, and that way it just takes it out of the equation. You can just relax a little more and just be yourself, right? And I think that's probably one of the most important things. does anybody feel like, they're ready to go back to the office because they're just tired of being at home? Or is it being at home now or working more at home actually nicer? Like, is there a positive bent to I've been working at home for almost 20 years. So for me, it's very natural. But a lot of people who've been going to the office for a very long time, having that separation is is actually an important part of being able to get work done, right?
I'll go ahead. I actually think that at our organization, we've been meeting more in a remote environment than we did in the office. So of course you kind of lose that daily camaraderie of, turning to your cube mate or neighbor and just having kind of casual banter, where our meetings seem to be a bit more structured, and we'll try to incorporate, some team building or icebreaker type things here and there. So for my team in particular, the work transition has gone well being in a remote environment, just because our team is already spread out across the country. But you do miss that camaraderie of just the folks that you would see every day. So looking forward to reconnecting.
Yeah, to add to that, because Mary and I are actually on the same team at the same organization. So, and
nice.
She's out in Colorado and I'm in Chicago. So, yeah, we're used to kind of working apart from each other while still going into our respective offices on the day-to-day. So this has been a really interesting connecting time for all of us. We have a group chat going. I love to see all the pet pictures and just see everyone's view of Colorado or Florida or wherever everyone is. So yeah, it's a pro to all of this, is kind of that connection that maybe we didn't expect.
Thank you. Well, that was all great tips and information and feedback.
So Jennifer, was that one just a little bit longer?
It was.
Okay.
They were going 7 minutes that time.
7 minutes?
Leighton's muted.
Was good as far as I was concerned, but
yeah, I keep forgetting to mention things. That one was a little longer. Sorry.
No, I thought it was good.
Yeah, I think that was about the right amount of time. 5 minutes felt a little short. Anyway, Jill, as long as you're talking, you want to bring us up to speed what you guys talked about?
We talked a lot about how we think at least the virtual video calls are here to stay, and that we're going to continue adjusting. So we talked a lot about how, at first you're showing up in your sweats and no makeup, and then we're starting to find ourselves actually getting dressed, things like that. So the come as you are, I think, is going to fade a bit, or we think as a group. But there's a lot of, like David said, their company is now going to be virtual. They don't see any value in coming back into the office at this point. So we're in it for a while.
Well, at least getting dressed from the waist up.
Waist up, exactly.
Christina, it reminds me of something you mentioned on our pre-call yesterday about the commercial real estate. People are going to do this now. What did you guys talk about, Christina?
Yeah, very similar. The kind of the difference with sort of everybody kind of starting like that, and how we probably we'll end up getting more formal. And then of course what I think that everybody keeps talking about these days is then what's the next step? When do people start to feel comfortable coming back? How do you adapt to that? How do you work in the hybrid component? It's out there and we're talking about it, but what does it actually look like, and how do you deploy that effectively? Yeah, I guess we had a lot of, and we did have a kind of a interesting side conversation too, just about how the different how these different avenues do lend themselves to different personality types. Some of us really do miss the old normal. I really do. I'm an extrovert, and this doesn't do as much for me. I do want to give somebody a hug. But it's not the 4-year-old, although he's a good hugger. But like it is really different. But where some people like this, it was Sharon who, in our discussion, who had apparently, we were talking about like the court, the Supreme Court hearings, and like apparently Clarence Thomas is a pretty shy person. He doesn't ask a lot of questions in normal. I don't know. I've never actually been there, but apparently in this setting, he's he's asked more questions. I think that's what you're saying, Sharon. I thought that was kind of interesting. Like, I wonder if eventually, as we have as we do this hybrid route, apparently, which is apparently, do you end up having some split between like extroverts and introverts and how they actually attend meetings? And then really what happens if all of a meeting is just all extroverts? What's going to, are you ever going to get anything done?
Yeah, that's a fair point. I wonder if it's different though, virtual and online. I mean, I'm an introvert. This is challenging for me, honestly, to sit here and yammer on about nothing. So I tend to avoid people virtually or in real life. So I don't know. I don't feel it's different. It's kind of like social media when everybody was talking about, like, when it was first hitting the scene and everybody was like, oh, you're young, you must know it. Like, no, because I'm not social. The media part's okay. It's the social part that I struggle with. Sorry, that was just a sidebar, which brings up the one word I wrote down from our discussion about inviting people into your house and the new normal. Katie said it's humanizing. It's like, and that really struck a chord with me. It's true. Like, here's my kitchen. Here's my daughter's bedroom. This is what I look like when I just roll out of bed and don't put makeup on. I put a little bit on just because I was going to be like the main guy. So with that, I'm going to kick it to Steven and ask what you guys talked about.
Yeah, we talked a lot about first that the new normal right now is that we've all sort of become these, set up for TV personalities. So it's like TV production. Instead of it just being, I'm going to go to the office and get work done, now you're having to think about how you look, what your lighting is going to be like, what your background is going to be like. And also one of the big things that someone pointed out was that you would be looking at yourself a lot more than you would be in real life. So a lot of times if you're going to the office, you don't really, sure, you look in the mirror before you leave, but when you're having a conversation, when you're speaking publicly, you're not looking at a little box of yourself the whole time. And one of the tips was just to maybe just remove yourself. Like, there is a way usually in Zoom that you can, hide your image and turn off your camera view. And sometimes that's helps us relax and be a little bit more ourselves. But we also talked about how we miss the interaction and the camaraderie in real life that comes from real life interactions. And although in some places people have been meeting more remotely, like maybe a daily check-in, that's been very helpful to kind of keeping that sort of camaraderie, like chats and just casual conversation that you don't get as much with Zoom meetings and virtual events.
I love the virtual Zoom meetings anyway, or video meetings with clients whom I've worked with for years and never seen. Yeah, so that is an improvement in my book, just for the regular day-to-day working with people, since so much of what we do is online. It was interesting though, we my mother's in an assisted living facility, and so they're going kind of door to door to help the residents Skype or meet or Zoom with their families. And they're finding it's actually really confusing them because they can't figure out how we all got on TV.
That's really interesting.
I was going to add that I do think we're choosing video when we would have chosen phone in the past. And like Leighton and I did a very casual, kickoff call with a client that we'd worked with, but like Jill had said, we'd never met them before, and there were people in new positions, which is always, you know, presents a rocky, you know, there's always that opportunity to lose an account when someone on the other team has changed. And so it was like this situation forced us into a video conversation that we wouldn't normally have done. And it probably helped the relationship because it immediately humanized us. We were a person and not just a voice.
Great point. I mean, we've been stressing just the whole industry has been stressing the importance of face-to-face meetings forever. And this really is the next best thing other than, I mean, conference calls don't quite do the same thing that seeing somebody's face does to your heart.
So Jill said this to me, or said this to us yesterday, and I thought this was interesting. She was, do you want the in-person, face-to-face versus in-person from the technology vendor? I think this is an interesting point and something I hadn't heard yet or read anywhere.
Well, and I actually hope it doesn't take off, but they were saying that these Zoom meetings and GoToWebinars and all these video meetings, these are face-to-face meetings. Well, we think are face-to-face meetings when you're actually in a room together. They say those are in-room meetings. I'm like, no, we are not changing the vernacular, no.
Yeah, I even wrote down for the next topic face-to-face. So we can't change it now. It's already written down on my notebook. So,
Leighton, before we go into a breakout, I know that we had a question from Tracy right before we went into the last one about like setting up a, like how to set up the breakout rooms. I'm guessing it would be helpful if we took a second and talk through that a little bit.
We did a lot of experimenting and found out a couple of things. When you're a host when you're the host, and you're setting up the Zoom meeting, there is the ability to automatically assign people to rooms, but it also makes it a manual thing when you actually start the meeting. You have to go click on each person's name and put them in a room, where if we did not do that, and we started the Zoom meeting just like we did today, like Jennifer probably should be talking because she's doing all the work. But there is the option when you're in the meeting, when it has started, you get a choice from Zoom. Do you want to randomly put people in a room or do you want to assign them? So we chose randomly, but it can be a combination. So Jennifer would then assign one of us moderators to a room, but the rest of us were thrown in randomly. Is that right, Jennifer?
It is correct. It's really easy to set up. You kind of pick how many rooms you want. You do the automatic assign and they show up. You can change them around. I'm adjusting that, Christina is in the first room, Jill's in the second, et cetera. So it's very easy to keep control of it and kind of balance out the rooms if you need to, somebody really loved to hear this speaker, you can change it. So, and you can do that all before you open the room. And then after the rooms are open, you can do a little switching around too.
Thanks. Marissa, you have your hand up, sort of. You got a blue.
Yeah, I just wanted to share an example. We've been doing Zoom for our church the last few months, and we do a breakouts for small group sharing, and then we have one group specifically for parents with young children to meet. So everybody else is randomized, but we do assign just those specific groups to be in one room if they wanted to.
Thanks. Yeah, we our first kind of idea at this breakout room was that we would have 3 breakout rooms, and each one would have its own topic, and then we would kind of shuffle the people so that they got into each room with a topic expert on each one. And once we started experimenting, that just wasn't going to work. It was just too much shuffling and making sure the right people were in the right room for a 5-10 minute session. But we do plan on future webinars to do like a same idea, but more extended, to where you actually register for the topic that you want to hear about, and then there is a subject matter expert on that topic. And that would give us plenty of time to pre-assign people, because you would register in advance through the, our registration process.
Yeah, let me also point out that Zoom has a really great API. API is Application Programming Interface, in case anybody doesn't know what that means. But if you have a developer or you hire a developer, you can actually tie in your registration component into sessions. So if somebody registers for these sessions, you can actually use the API to set up breakout rooms and assign people ahead of time for your meeting. And that will automate some of that process, which I think in the future, especially if you're dealing with thousands of people, you're going to have to do. Like that, manually assigning it is just a lot of work. There's also ways to like upload lists and so forth, but definitely check out that.
That also answers Tracy's question, I think, because Tracy was asking, is it possible for the attendee to select? But it would have to go through registration. You can't do it on a Zoom.
Yeah, I know several of the registration platforms are like running at full pace to get, get kind of pre-set up integration, so that like you don't personally have to know someone who. We have Stephen, so we ask him a lot of those questions, but a lot of them are trying.
It helps to have somebody that likes to read API protocols for fun.
But yeah, I know like when we originally started talking about, hey, let's have one of these webinars where we're just sort of playing with breakouts and letting people experience it and being really honest about like what our experience, our thought was initially that people would like just, we just picked the breakout room we want to go to, and we did find out pretty quickly with testing that at least for Zoom, it has to go in a kind of different direction. I don't know for those of you that joined us a couple of weeks ago when we had Cindy Lowe on, she sent out a link to a matrix that her company has worked on and is continuously updating, and it lists a lot of the platforms and like which ones have breakout rooms and free, all these different like requirements and specs, and it's interesting to look at because there's like not tons and tons that have the breakout feature. So
yeah, okay, so you guys want to do one more? So I think we're running a little bit short on time, so let's just do 5 minutes this time. And I've got 2 topics left written down that we can quickly do a vote on. You guys want to talk about what happens when we do go back to face-to-face meetings, or do you want to talk about the different kind of virtual platforms like software? And so show of hands, what happens when you go back to face-to-face meetings? Software.
This is where my nerdy side.
You guys are just like raising different hands.
You should use the participant raise hand.
Yeah.
What I was trying to get to was my participant thing. I couldn't find it. So it's like I couldn't raise my real hand.
In the rooms that I've been in, we haven't actually stuck to the topic. So let's just do it, and we'll get your thoughts on different software platforms for virtual meetings as well as face-to-face meetings. Jennifer, you look okay. Never mind, you got it. Okay.
Hi, y'all.
Hi. I'll give you real honest. This is the first time I've had more than one person who wasn't with attendee management in my breakout room. I'm so excited. So, do you guys have an opinion on what you want to do? Which way we're going to go? I think they're both pretty interesting. Kim, I loved your response earlier when you're like, no, on the in-person, or like this is in-person meeting.
No, I don't want to change that.
Yeah. What is your you guys Kim and David, you guys are both, I know, are both involved in meetings. Mary, I don't know you. It's nice to meet you.
Hi. I work for Wounded Warrior Project, so we're a veteran service organization. We have been fortunate to be able to still be fully operational in a telephonic and virtual capacity. But there is a lot of value that we can't deliver to the warriors, veterans, and their families. So we will slowly start transitioning in a still deciding way back to face-to-face events, but still incorporating virtual, because we've been able to reach so many warriors in more remote areas where we don't necessarily have a presence to get that engagement and participation.
Mary, when are you anticipating starting to see people face to face?
The last I heard, we will start, so we do both single day engagement opportunities and then multi-day programming. Of course, staying in line with local state guidance. We will probably start doing some single day engagement face-to-face towards the end of June, early July. And multi-day, I can't see us proceeding, maybe 1 or 2 here and there in the fall, but likely not until 2021.
Are you guys seeing?
Mary, what state are you in?
I live in Colorado Springs. We're headquartered in Jacksonville, Florida, though, so we have about 12, 13 offices across the country in addition to field teammates.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how that bar has moved. Like, you know, it felt like July. We have one event that was moved from April to July that's still on the books. But
I have a single meeting it was in May, then it got moved to June, and now it's moved to October. And the hotel's been really good. I mean, haven't had any sort of, there's no ramifications at this point. They just keep moving it for us, which has been nice. But that being said, it's also in Cambridge. So I'm kind of like, I just heard, Harvard's not going back for the fall.
Yeah.
And so I'm pretty sure that they're going to be the government around there is pretty liberal. So I'm wondering if it's not going to happen, or if I can only have 10 people, in our meeting. But we're anticipating 200. So I don't know if it's going to happen, right?
And what's your experience, Ben?
Well, it's interesting. So we have a client whose original dates were November, and they wanted to move to August. And the hotel that they're in, they don't have the space. There's no availability. So they are in the process of surveying their members to see what they want to do. And it's a pretty resounding, let's stay in November. I'm personally shocked that they're moving forward with that. Super happy about it, but just interesting, different mentality than a lot of our clients are. Very conservative and don't want to make a switch to this year. And so I'm happy that they want to stick with those November dates. They're still kind of not 100% committing yet, but it's very positive that they want to stay with their original dates. They're about 600, and that's in Texas. So
yeah, we'll take everybody.
We'll see, and then we've got 2 customers that are October, and so we're just waiting.
Yeah, that's where we're too. Oh, this stuff goes so fast once you start talking. It looks like we're gonna get kicked out. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
It's really great to talk to.
That countdown goes really fast.
Was that also 7 minutes, or did we go 5 that time?
We went 5 that time because we are running up on our time for today. We like to allow you to have a few minutes between potentially your next call at noon.
I definitely think with 4 participants or so, in order to give everybody a little time to speak, it's like 7 minutes is probably more a good time. 5 minutes is very short for letting more than like 1 or 2 people say something, I think.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time together in that last session. This is a smaller group than we've had before, so it's been kind of nice just to have a discussion with 20 people.
Sorry, I think that's worth noting too, though, is like as you conduct these groups that through the course of the hour, the group is probably going to shrink, and that format, you know, and pacing maybe changes over the course of that hour.
Yeah, that's one interesting point on the virtual, right? It's like so much easier to leave or to multitask, you know, do different things. So you know, whereas where you face to face, you know, you're much less likely to get up and walk out.
Yeah. So before we get to what we talked about, because we don't have much time, I want to go ahead and promote what we're doing next week. It came up a few times about production value and what, you know, just some do's and don'ts of conducting these virtual meetings. We're going to have some guests on from ACL Live, and I had their names written down. Michael Escobar and Hallie Williams. They will be, you know, showing us kind of some do's and don'ts about just what we're doing here. We'll probably learn more than anybody else. So we hope you guys can join us. And are there any key takeaways from our last discussion that you guys want to go over real quick? We got about 3 minutes. Okay, just end it now then.
We had a good discussion. It was fun and it was interesting, but you know, there's still so much who knows out there. You know, you know, we were talking about how somebody has an event in July and the hotel's not even open yet, much less do they know what the hotel's going to do to help support a face-to-face meeting. I mean, an in-person, in-room, face-to-face meeting.
Yeah, I think there's also still a ton of room for innovation and creativity, and we're still kind of in the learning phase. And if we can, I mean, even after this call, just sit with our thoughts and be like, okay, that's what was said. How do I make that, you know, something really great? Because I think that's untapped right now.
Yeah, one thing we talked about was the importance possibly going forward of outdoor meetings. You know, Jill keeps calling them in-room meetings. I don't know where she got that. That's dumb. Just kidding, Jill. It wasn't you. But yeah, I think people are going to be more comfortable meeting outside. And is that going to be a big deal going forward? How do you plan an outdoor event with weather?
I read an article just about that this morning. It must have been posted in, I don't know, maybe some sort of MPI group, but yeah, real interesting. And Trey said drive-in meetings. Like you've seen a lot of people talk about the drive-in meetings and like different ways you can utilize drive-ins. So interesting how something like that sort of feels like a thing of the past can be like repurposed for a thing in our future, right? That innovation that Bregan was talking about.
We my breakout was mostly probably the only one that was talking about software, but we did talk about software a little bit. And
I wonder how that happened.
Yeah. And who was talking the whole time? Yeah. So it kind of sucked up the time on that one, but it was good. We just talked about how Zoom, you know, is clearly like people are using Zoom as a terminology for just any conference now with multiple people, like a Zoom, even if you're using Google Meet. And we were also wondering, like, is there another technology that we're sort of missing that is really maybe a better alternative or that we don't know about? And I honestly feel like Zoom is so far the most effective solution for what we're doing so far. They're the only ones that have breakout rooms in a way that's actually intuitive and usable. We as a company are using On24 for larger conferences and so forth that handles multiple elements of a virtual event. So I think Google Meet is probably, Google Teams is probably the closest second. Personally, I do not like WebEx, and I feel like those GoToMeeting can tend to be buggy for me. But does anybody else have anything they'd like to share about technology they've been using that has been better than what they have now?
Well, Google Meet just made itself free for everybody when it used to be paid, but they still don't have the functionality of a Zoom.
Yeah, apparently there's a way of creating like sub hangouts that's like kind of their breakout feature, but it sounds complicated. And I know that they're working on that, but you know, it's taken a while to finalize.
Everybody's scrambling.
Yeah.
Zoom has such a head start, like,
Yeah,
you know, 5 years ahead of everybody else.
I'm probably a broken record to my team, but I also think we talk so much about the platform in which those meetings are delivered, but we've got to step back and figure out how to like pull them all in, and using, whether or not, I mentioned registration systems kind of scrambling to integrate with Zoom, because if you're real, this is a meeting, like an event is lots of meetings and lots of ways to come together, so you're still having that kind of coming together of like a microsite and registration and, learning about all those things and then pulling it together for like a singular full event experience. We thought we all had it down, and now we've got to figure it all out again. And then how to get people when it's time to join those things, how best to deliver all that information. So
yeah, all of Steven's playground friends are out there writing APIs between the registration software and Zoom and WebEx and this and that and the other. So like Events Air that's using Zoom and Twilio, and also GoToWebinar, and they're using them all because we might need them all.
Meg in the chat also brought up Facebook live events. There's also Instagram live events, YouTube live streaming, and we've seen people using, so one of the softwares that is widely used for live streaming is OBS, and it's a free streaming software that works on Mac, Linux, and Windows. It is actually fairly intuitive, and it allows you to take any source, whether it's audio, video, and broadcast that to a live stream location, whether that be YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram. There's also an OBS Studio.
OBS.
Yeah. So if you're interested in live streaming, that's a little bit more of a one-way, but you can also have somebody managing your chat. So it's not necessarily a meeting as much as it is a presentation or a show. But you can also take questions through the chat and then have a live moderator or a live presenter actually answering those questions live. And another technology is called Restream, RESTREAM.io, and that allows you to take that stream and broadcast it to like every single streaming platform at one time. And it's a fairly affordable way of doing that. So you can broadcast to Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, so forth.
Thanks, Stephen. That was great. So it's 2 minutes till noon, and we're gonna wrap it up. But we hope you guys will join us next week. I think it's gonna be great. Not next week, 2 weeks from now. We're gonna have guests who will really just blow your mind about production value. So once again, thank you guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope to see you soon. Or virtually.
Thank you, everybody, for being here.
thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Have a great day.